Senator Matsunaga here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So today we have quite a great group of students with us and some of my colleagues and friends as well. But without further ado, what I'm going to do is I will introduce Jen, who will then introduce the first portion of our speakers. And then I will introduce our students a little bit later, or do you want me to introduce them right now?
Either is fine.
Okay, so well, I'll introduce on the screen, you'll know Dasha is joining us. So Sarah, Juno, and Sky. So they are my students, and they'll be part of our panel later on, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about them. Also, Jazale is there right next to Jen. And so, but without further ado, I will turn it over to Jen, but I do want to introduce Jen first. So Jen is currently the Executive Director of Real Innovative Connections, a nonprofit organization who provides lifelong learning experiences through education and partnership. She has dedicated over 20 years in education as a classroom educator and designing innovative curriculum to support students and educators. So I will turn it over to Jen, who's going to do this wonderful presentation around discovering the Pacific. So thank you again, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose and Michiko-san, for having us today. It is truly an honor to take part in sharing our history and our journey towards peace. The history of Pearl Harbor is a time in history we will remember. We have gained valuable lessons of reconciliation, forgiveness, and peace. In a moment, you will see a video compilation of Pearl Harbor National Memorial designed by Keith Uehara Photography. The video begins with the entrance to the Pearl Harbor sites and leading you through the visitor center. As we enter the boat ride, you will see Pearl Harbor, and much like the video, it was a typical Sunday morning in Hawaii, sunny and warm. Battleship Row consists of American battleships lined up in the harbor. Some of the battleships are moored in pairs. You will see the white mooring quays in the harbor today. The Arizona Memorial stands as a symbol to honor the men who sacrificed their lives on December 7th. It is a symbol of the opportunities, challenges, and of nations coming together over time. I'm going to share my screen and we'll start the video presentation. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
All right. Okay. You got it? I got it. I got it.
Okay, good, good. Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Hello, can anyone hear me? I'm viewing Jenn's screen.
This is from Nagasaki. I can't hear the sound of the video.
ジェン先生がミュートしてるからかなって。
It's partly, I think Jen is in the mute, so I don't hear any music of the video.
Is that better? Wanted to thank Keith Uehara Photography for the amazing video. We hope one day you will have the opportunity to come to Hawaii and experience each of the Pearl Harbor sites. Today, we look at Pearl Harbor and see the bookends of the history. The Arizona Memorial stands as a remembrance of December 7, 1941. The Battleship Missouri Memorial stands as a remembrance of September 2nd, 1945. Together, they signify our history and continued journey towards peace. With us today is Dorinda Nicholson. Hi, Auntie.
Hi.
Dorinda Nicholson. Dorinda was a 6-year-old girl who witnessed the attack on Pearl Harbor. She is also an award-winning author of The Pearl Harbor Child and Pearl Harbor Warriors. We are honored to have her share her experience with us today. Auntie.
Well, aloha, everyone. And can you hear me?
Yes, and this is from Nagasaki. I need to translate what you say because here today we have a hibakusher too. So he doesn't understand English. So is that okay? Sometimes I'm going to jump in to translate.
Yes. What would be easiest? Would you ask me a question and then let me answer your question and you translate?
Oh, okay. So this is like, so it will be like question and answer session. Is that okay?
If you would ask me a question for your students, and then I will answer, and I think that might work easier.
わかりました。So, then maybe I should introduce our student here today.
I would love that.
皆さん、まずは自己紹介をしてください。Here there's two Japanese students here in our meeting room today, and there's 3 peace volunteers. Peace volunteer の人たちをオンにしてください。自己紹介してください。はい。谷口さんも OK。OK。じゃあ、一人ずつまず長崎からお願いします。英語で。
Hello.
聞こえてますか？ Can you hear us? はい。
Hello, my name is Noah Yamamoto and I'm 17 years old. Nice to meet you.
Can I see? I cannot see.
Yeah, they're on screen.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
関さん、後で。
Oh, okay.
もう一回。
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Hello, my name is Yukino Yamaguchi. I'm a 3rd generation of Hibakusha, the atom bomb survivor from Nagasaki. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Wave at me, so make sure I'm waving the right place.
Next, we have 3 Nagasaki Peace Volunteers. They're college students, so they will introduce each other. Starting from Miyake-san, Taniguchi-san, Yamada-san, お願いします。
Hi. Hello, I'm Kyoka and I'm not college student yet, but next year I will be. Well, I'm 19 years old and I'm a member of this volunteer club since last year, and I'm really excited to join this event. And nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Your English is very good, and
Thank you.
I like your pink.
Oh,
Yes, very cute.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Fumiya, and I am a university student and enjoying the activity of Peace Volunteer in this year. And I got interested in peace studies because my grandparents were Hibakusha and live in Nagasaki now. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having this session today. Nice to meet you.
Oh, Fumiya, nice to meet you. And I would like some time to know your parents' story.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet you. Aloha.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hi, Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hey, I'm second madam, and now I'm college student and 20 years old. Today, I'm glad to see you and join this conversation. Thank you. And I would like to more about Arakam Pearl Harbor today. Thank you.
Arigato. Aloha.
And we have a special guest here today who is an atomic bomb survivor, Hibakusha. He's 93 years old. So I want to introduce you him. Tsuki-san, ここのか持ったところ好きで Sorry. We have to share the computer because yeah. で、英語でお名前と年齢を言ってください。
I'm Shohei Tsuiki, 93 years old. I'm survivor, Hibakusha.
ありがとうございます。Jose-san, do you want to other participants from Hawaii side also introduce yourself?
Yes.
And do they have any questions for me too?
Yes, Dorinda, I'm just gonna briefly, I guess, introduce some of our students here from Hawaii, and then we'll get to the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no worries.
Okay.
It's quite
Okay. All right. Could you
everyone
English then? Okay.
I figured we might as well. So I will. I have bios for everybody, but I'll take it away. So one of the other individuals joining us with us today is Neil Yamamoto. Neil, there he is waving.
Oh, I know, Neil, I know you. Hi.
And he will do a little bit of a presentation in a bit as well. Jazale Taeza is a freshman in high school that aspires as a marine biologist. She's right next to Jen, so you'll see her there. Sky Kawi-chun Matsukawa is a senior at the University of Hawaii, majoring in political science, ethnic studies, also pursuing undergrad certificates in peace studies and Peace Corps prep certificates. So you'll see her right there. If Sky can wave a little bit, there you go. Sarah Kane is pursuing majoring in nursing, peace studies, and Peace Corps prep certificate, and she's also a student here at the University of Hawaii. Juno Kusaka is from Hiroshima, actually, and her grandmother is a hibakusha. And after she entered Akita International University, majoring in liberal arts, she's studying, currently pursuing an undergrad certificate in peace studies here at the University of Hawaii as an exchange student. And then Dasha Figueroa is an anthropology major, also pursuing the field of law, and she's originally from California, but lived in South America during her youth. And she is somewhere around here as well. There's a lot. Oh, there she is. Yes. But yeah, I'm just trying to be conscientious of time. So, but I'm happy to let them jump in, or I know you'll hear from them a little bit later, but I want to make sure that there's time to ask questions and answers with Dorinda, who's our special guest today. So thank you so much for being here today, Dorinda.
You're most welcome. So does anyone have a question?
I think if you can actually maybe get us started a little bit, Dorinda, on
I will do
the
it.
story itself, just because I think it's all really new to them. I mean, a lot of these students have actually never been to Hawaii or Pearl Harbor. So that video that they watched just recently is like their first intro into Pearl Harbor. So it's quite an honor to have you here. And so thank you so much.
Oh, mahalo. The video was so beautifully done. And I hope the students captured the feeling of actually being there in the water of Pearl Harbor and at the memorial. I was 6 years old and living with my mother and my father and my baby brother. And on December 7, 1941, we were in our house. It was early Sunday morning, and we saw the airplanes come over. And my father and I stood in our front yard, and we could see the torpedo bombers, and we could see, because they were so low over the house, we could see the pilots, and we could see the goggles over their face. That day, my father and my mother and my baby brother and I got into our car to get away from the bombing, and we went up into the sugarcane fields, and that's where we stayed for the rest of the day. And we could look down and see the airplanes, and we could see the smoke. There's, from the ships that were burning, you could see black oily smoke that would go miles above the harbor. And later that day, we could not come back to our house because we lived so close to the harbor. So we had to wait. We stayed in a town close by. Those of you in Hawaii would know Waipahu, at the sugar plantation. And we stayed there till it was safe to come back to our house. So right away, there was no school until February. And that night, blackouts started right away. We had martial law. And so you could not leave your house after dark or until the sun came up the next morning. And I can continue, and I don't know if I'm speaking at the right speed for translation. So am I at the right speed?
Yes.
For our
yes.
translator?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
I've been translating. Thank you.
Okay. And how many more minutes do you have for me?
Sorry, Jose-san, I'm not so sure about the time.
Yep. No, Jen, I'm going to defer to you because I know Neil has a little bit too, but I'll let Jen jump in here.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, Michiko-san, maybe there's any questions from the students as well too?
Yes. Maybe you can raise the hands. Yeah. 大きくですね。
How do you think about Japan at that time, and how do you think about Japan at now?
And could you hear the question?
I did not.
So, what was your impression against Japan at the time of Pearl Harbor? And is there any change after, probably it's been like 75 years? Is there any change in your?
Oh, yes. A little bit difficult to explain because Hawaii has so many Japanese. So the Japanese in Hawaii, we considered islanders, and to us, it was not the empire of Japan. Right after the attack and all the way through the war, and September 2nd, just 2 weeks ago, we had the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. One of my books tells the story of a Japanese dive bomber pilot, Zenji Abe, and a American Marine, Richard Fisk, how they were enemies in 1941, but it took about 50 years. In 1991, Japan and America certainly were friends before then, but those two men wanted so much to be friends at that time, and they had a ceremony and met together at Pearl Harbor. And of course, Japan and the USA are very good friends now.
Yeah, I will just translate quickly. ハワイには日系人の人がたくさんいましたから、戦争中であっても私たちは何かこう日本が侵略者としてというよりは、私たちの同じ島の人であるのが、日本人、日系人がいることからそういう印象がありましたと。で、実は2週間前に私たちが終戦を祝うようなことがあったんですけれども、今年ですよね、多分。あと私がちょっと本で書いたんですけれども、実際の和解のためには、結構長い時間かかる。で、一人彼女がお話ししてくださったのは、安倍さんというもともとなんかパイロットだった方、それから、海軍じゃないや、マリーンだから水兵いた人たちが、和解のセレモニーっていうのがあったんですが、それは1991年、50年後のお話でした。でもちろんアメリカと日米関係というのはどんどん良くなりましたから、今は全くそういうことはないですけれどもというお話です。はい、Thank you very much。他に質問あったら、山本さんあります？なんかあるんですか？聞いてもいいかしら。でも、this can be a little bit, it's a question from me. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay. This may be a bit challenging, but I know that in the U.S., sometimes some school teach or some people mention that because of Pearl Harbor, there was Nagasaki and Hiroshima. How do you think about it?
Woo! Very hard question. That is such a sad part of war. And I will respond from my reading and then a personal response. But my reading was our president, President Harry Truman, found out when he became, President Roosevelt died. And so President Truman became our president. And that was when he found out about the atomic bomb and atomic power. And that the decision then was made to use the bombs so that the war would end. My personal so sad feeling about war is that more women, children, civilians are killed in war than the soldiers, and such a sad way to end the war. But it was a decision made by our president and his advisors at that time.
Thank you. I will just quickly translate. 私はこの原爆投下というのは本当に戦争の悲しさの一つだというふうに思います。本でも書いたんですけども、ルーズベルト大統領の後、トゥルーマンが大統領になって原爆投下という決断をし、その理由はそれによって戦争を終わらせるということが目的でした。ただ個人的に本当にここの犠牲者になった人たちというのは女性、子供が多く、そして民間人がほとんどだったということ、兵士の人よりも民間人が死んだということに関して特にその悲惨さと悲しみを覚えますということです。Any other questions from Japanese students?
Yes.
You can wave. So, and どうぞ。
We, the students in Nagasaki, have an opportunity to listen the testimony of the Hibakusha, the atomic bomb survivor. So, do you have an opportunity to tell your story to the students in Hawaii or other countries?
Could you hear? Should I be okay? In Nagasaki, part of the peace education, we often hear the story from Hibakusha, who is a survivor. And I was wondering how you also, she thinks that you are also sharing your story to school and all this. Can you, where do you share? Who do you share in the school or children now? How do you share it to?
What do I share when I go to schools?
And she wants to know probably about the reaction and how often you go or where you do it, like school or.
I go mostly to schools, and I share my Pearl Harbor story. I am different from a child who may have lived in Nagasaki, Hiroshima, or Tokyo, who was bomb, not atomic bomb, because I'm one of the few children in Hawaii to go through the attack, only because I lived in the harbor. I feel it's my mission and responsibility to share my story with our students. And then when I am there, I tell them what it was like to be a child in other countries. I wrote a book for National Geographic, and I have a Tokyo story that I share with them of how hard it was for children everywhere during the war, including the American Japanese children. 130,000 of them were put into camps for 3 years. So I want to tell this story. I also want to give you, or Jen can give you my email if you want to correspond with me. I can send you a PDF of the friendship book between the American Marine and the Japanese Zenji Abe that you may share with your students. I am so pleased. In fact, I almost am crying. I am so pleased that we are doing this. And it's such an honor to share my story with you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just translate briefly. 学校とかで子どもたちに、私の体験を共有するときに、フォーカスを当てているのは、子どもとして戦争を体験するっていうのはどういうことかということに集中してます。6歳でいらっしゃったということで。特に日系人の子どもたちのことを考えるときに、多くが強制収容所にいて過ごした経験もあります。だから私の戦争体験というのは、本当に子どもの目線で、語るということが多いです。で、今日本当に涙が出るほど感動しているのが、いろんな海外の人にもこうやってシェアしていることっていうことを本当に感謝しますということです。鈴木さんなんかないですか？こっち見て。こっちもちょっとこっち。Our Hibakusha want to talk to you.
ただの質問ですけれども、畑の中から攻撃するのを見とったっていうことですが、すぐ日本の飛行機っていうことが分かったんですかね。
Okay, because you two share the story war. He wants to ask about the day of the attack. You mentioned that you ran to the sugarcane field, and he wants to know how did you know? Did you know that it was Japan? You are 6 years old.
No, but my parents did, and then the radio, we turn on the car radio, and the radio announcer tells us on the radio, and the radio announcer tells us, stay home, don't use the telephone, and military to go to their base, and medical to go to the hospitals. And that's when we find out, but it's later.
もちろん分からなかったですね。両親が教えてくれた。で、特にラジオによって、まず家にいること、安全な場所にいること、それから電話を使ってはいけないこと、軍隊の人は自分たちの持ち場に戻ること、病院の人は病院に行くようにというようなことをラジオで話したっていうのを聞きました。他にもありますか？
Yeah, come downstairs.
Okay, he want to. Is that okay? Okay.
アメリカに行った時に、アメリカの普通の市民の方がこういう話をしたんです。それは日本が真珠湾を攻撃したからこれいかんって言ってすぐその場で日本に原爆の攻撃をしたんだっていうことを聞いたのでびっくりしたんですが、それほどやっぱり真珠湾と原爆とは非常に両者ともアメリカ人も日本人も深いものを持っているんだなっていうようなことを感じております。で、その感じを言うたんです。
He just wanted to share the comment. As Nagasaki atomic bomb was really kind of really the important thing for us to think about the ending of war or whatever. I think for you it's part of her refuge stuck into your memory for the rest of your time, and he just want to comment. I have kind of shared feeling because I had this audio of the atomic bomb. So he just wanted to comment for those who survived war or experienced war has this moment where, which is very like important in your life, isn't it? That's his comment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
同じような戦争の体験を共有してますねというお話をしましたので、はい。オブザーバーの人っていうか、ピーボの人はどうですか？ I'm asking some other volunteers.
Can I go? So thank you for sharing your story. And I felt it was so hard to share your story after like going through that incident. Well, I just want to ask, like, do you feel any changes of the audience after telling your story?
Let me see if I understand. Do I feel a change in the audience? Is that your question?
Yeah. Like after, before, and after.
My audience is so young, like you. And so it seems so long ago that I think it's hard for them to understand. The story that everybody understands the most is the one that I'm going to share with you. And that's the one, a personal story of a 19-year-old American Marine and the Japanese Zenji Abe pilot. Two countries enemies, and then two countries become friends. That's, I think, is the most important story, and how awful war is, because it's beautiful students like you that suffer the most.
I'm just going to translate quickly for some other people. 本当に伝えていろんなところで話す皆さんみたいに若い人たちに伝えていくんですけども、私が本当に重要だと思っているのは本当に戦争が悲惨であるっていうことで、やっぱりその元兵士たちの和解の活動を通して 和解をするっていうことは本当にあなたたちのようにキラキラしているティーンエイジャーたちが戦争に巻き込まれたけど和解されていく、そういうプロセスの活動をやってるんですけれども、そのことそういうふうにしてメッセージや平和のメッセージを伝えていっています。Sorry, Hibakusho want to comment on that.
こうして真珠湾攻撃を直接見た人とお話ししたということは非常に今日は良かったなと思っております。で私たちは本当に一般の人たちがたくさん殺されていったんだけれども、戦争っていうのはもともと無慈悲なものでこうして両者がですねお互いにその時のことを話し合って、それで感じていくことが今後戦争をなくす大きな力になっていくんじゃないかと思います。今日は本当にあなたのお話を聞いて感激をしております。
I'm going to translate it. He feels so honored to talk to you because you actually witnessed the Pearl Harbor. And we were past enemies, but as you said, and in your book, I think it is really, really great because we were past enemy once we, and then we were those who experienced war in different countries. But I really feel happy that because today I could see somebody who actually witnessed the Pearl Harbor, and he's asking you. I think it is our duty to kind of tell the world our story and for the peace.
Thank you so much. And I wish to know your story sometime. So maybe you can share your story with me sometime. Like, come visit me. Come visit me. Come visit me.
ハワイに来てください。
ぜひお話をしたいと思いますので。
Oh, I want to talk to you in person too.
長崎にも来てくだ
So
さい。
you have to come to Nagasaki. Any other questions?
Yes.
はい。じゃあ先、so first I'm gonna ask on どうしよう、こちらで会場の人にまず聞いて、その後山田さんお願いします。
So thank you sharing for your story. And so what do you want the audience to be after learning about your story? Can you hear me?
Okay, she's asking, what do you expect from the audience after you shared your story to them? Is this clear?
What I expect from them is to learn to love their country, like you love your country. I want our American students to learn to love their country, to appreciate those who serve their country, whether they serve in the military or they serve in charities or hospitals, and to vote, how important it is to vote. We have an important election coming up in America in a short time, and America is really struggling right now. We have riots. We have people who don't like people because of the color of their skin. And I try to share with them, we were all in this same boat of life together. We need to row together. We need to make it a love boat.
Thank you. I will translate. まず私が自分の体験を共有して皆さんに知ってほしい、そして聞き手の人に考えてほしいと思うことは、自分たちの国を愛すること、日本は 日本人は日本人を、米国人は米国人を愛することっていうのは重要だと思います。また戦争の時にいろんな人が、関わったわけですけれども、今に至るまで、軍隊で、アメリカだったら軍隊で働いている人、また病院とかで働いている人、そういう人たちに対して、感謝の心を持ったりということ。あとは一つ重要なこと、今アメリカは選挙を迎えようとしてますから、投票すること、それを必ずするように、若いオーディエンスの人に言ってます。米国、例えば政策の一つとして人種差別とかがあるような傾向になっています。そういう時に実は私たちは国も、国内外で同じ船に乗ってるっていうこと、この人生を漕いでいく時に同じ愛の船で行きましょうじゃないかということを伝えています。Thank you. So we have another question. 山田さん大丈夫ですよ。
Thank you for sharing your story. Do you think what is important to teach about history to children can easy to understand? Because I would like to tell about this story, history of world for young children. Could you teach me the method concretely?
Did you understand the question? 日本語で大丈夫。I'm asking her to translate in it.
日本で、自分よりももっと若い小さい子どもたちにその戦争の悲惨さとかを伝えていきたいっていうのが私のやりたいことの一つなんですけども、その子ども目線とか子どもに向けて何かを発信するときに具体的に気をつけていらっしゃったり、こういうことをこういうやり方でやるといいよっていうアドバイスみたいなことを教えていただきたいなと思っています。
I will just translate again. She has a passion like yourself that she wants to teach about peace to the younger kids, and she's seeking your advice. How actually you communicate with them because there's such a young age. Is there anything you particularly care when you share your story to very young children?
Yes, that it starts right with their brothers and their sisters, and it starts in school. They don't bully, they don't make fun of their classmates, and if they go to eat at the cafeteria and somebody is sitting by themselves, they go and invite that person. And it starts when you're very small so that you learn that is the way of life.
Thank you. And also, sorry, I kind of mistranslated, but she wants to seek your advice because she also wants to teach the children. And but she was wondering how she can kind of communicate with them.
She can well, the best way is to share stories and read those stories to the children when they're very, very young, stories about getting along, and then doing games with them where they have to learn to share and to get along with each other.
ありがとうございます。訳します。I'm going to translate. 多分皆さんわかると思うんですけども、子供たちに共有するときに、物語、ストーリーの形を使ったりします。それからゲームという形もあるし、それで彼女が言ってるのは、本当に若い時からそういうのに親しむということはとても重要ですということと、あとちょっと私が訳しきれなかったんですけど、教えるときにいつも言うこと、この前半部分なんですけれども、学校でいじめをしないとか、仲間外れされている子がいたら一緒に座ってご飯食べようよとか、そういうことも絶対に伝めています。Does anybody has any other questions? And then also I want to ask the time, is this?
And if we have enough time, I'd like to leave you with a story that will take about 2 minutes.
we would love to hear if we have enough time. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, please go right ahead, Dorinda. You have the 2 minutes.
All right, it's hard for me to talk short, but this is a story that I love to share. It's a story of coming to Tokyo to visit Zenji Abe in his home. And Zenji Abe sent his son-in-law to meet me at the train station. And I first got in the wrong side of the car and we laughed. But when we came to Mr. Abe's house, he offered us, my husband and me, his bed in his bedroom, because he says he knows Americans don't sleep on the floor very well. So we took his bed, and as we are in bed, he knocks at the door and asks to come in. And he comes in and he says his prayers. And then he comes to us and bows to us with a prayer, thanking us for coming to visit him. I was so touched by this invitation because this is a Japanese pilot that flew over my house in Pearl Harbor, and now I am sleeping in his bed. And we are friends for life. And that's the story I will be sending you with my aloha. Thank you so much for your invitation.
Okay, thank you. It's beautiful. I just want to quickly translate. So, ですね、今のお話は、東京にも元日本軍の兵士のパイロットで実際に地上攻撃に関わってた人に、取材に行ったんですよね。その時に自宅に泊めてもらって、夜本当に来てくれてありがとうって一言言われたことを本当に感動して思い出します。で、この方とはずっとお友達でいます。だから自分の家を攻撃した人とお友達になったということです。はい、does anyone have any other questions? 大丈夫ですか？大丈夫。So I think we asked 大丈夫。Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, before we move to the student part, though, we still have Neil. So I just want to provide some space for him to share with us his portion. So I'll leave it to Jen or whoever transitions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I stay on? Can I stay on to listen to Neil?
Most
Yes.
definitely.
Thank you, Auntie. I'm always inspired by your story.
Oh, love you, Jen.
Today we have Neil Yamamoto, the founder of Inspired History Hawaii. Neil has an extensive knowledge and passion for the history of Hawaii and World War II. He specializes in sharing inspirational stories beyond the history books. Neil, it is an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. 皆さん、こんにちは。はじめまして。どうぞよろしくお願いします。As you probably can tell by my last name, I am Yonsei. I'm fourth generation Japanese American here in Hawaii. My great grandparents emigrated from Hiroshima and from Yamamoto to come here to Hawaii to work in those sugarcane plantations that Dorinda ran through as a child. On December 7th, my grandmother was 14 years old at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and her eldest brother actually joined the United States Marine Corps as an interpreter and was a Marine in the Pacific, interrogating Japanese prisoners of war from the Pacific Theater of War. My grandfather's brother was, they called him a kibe. He was born in Japan. He was raised in Hawaii and went back to Japan in the 1930s. And by 1940, he was conscripted into the Imperial Japanese Army. And by 1944, he was in the Philippines and was fighting against American Marines in the Philippines. My grandfather, though, he was Nisei here in Hawaii, and he joined in 1943, he joined the American Army, and he wore this patch on his shoulder. This patch of the 442, all Nisei from Hawaii and from the mainland, not fighting in the Pacific, but fighting in Europe. And that I want to start with is very similar to the story that that Dorinda shared with you. But my story is, I think, is a story of my own family, because in 1994, my grandfather, who served with the American Army, and my uncle, who served in the Imperial Japanese Army, they met for the first time in 50 years. And they met at the USS Arizona Memorial. And as we left that day, my grandfather told me, he said, "Do you know who that man is?" I said, "Hi, that's Uncle Tadashi." And he said, "Good that you know who he is." And he said to me, "We were enemies 50 years ago." But he said, "But he is my brother and he's your uncle." And he told me, you know, it stays with me for years since, and I'm now 38 years old. And he says to me, "Don't ever forget who you are and where you come from." And that has always been an inspiration for me to tell these stories. And that's why one of the reasons I founded Inspired History Hawaii was to tell stories like that. So I wanted to start with that, but if I can, I want to share my screen. And I will start with the presentation of the end of World War II.
I worked with him on the Missouri, and I've never heard his story. You can see there's the
amazing
Missouri.
though that he had relatives that were enemy.
I forgot I was doing this, or I would have invited you.
So you should see the first slide that says "From War to Peace, the End of World War II." On the 15th of August in 1945, in a recorded radio address, the Emperor of Japan announced his intention to surrender and end World War II. Now, this is after Hiroshima on the 6th of August. This is after Nagasaki on the 9th of August. And the Japanese emperor had seen all of the damage of the atomic bombs. He had seen all the hibakusha. He had seen all the damage. But Japan's announcement causes celebration amongst all the allied nations. The war was finally over. But on the ships of the allied navies and amongst the soldiers who were all over the world in the Pacific, the celebration is muted. And what that means is they couldn't celebrate as much as they wanted to, because we still weren't sure if the Japanese were in fact going to surrender, or if the war was really going to be over. The battleship Missouri was ordered to Tokyo Bay, Japan, and would be the site of Japan's formal surrender. And here she is. This is the battleship Missouri, September 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo Bay. Now, around her were 255 other ships of the allied navies of the world. The guns were ready, but they knew that the war was coming to a close. They knew that war was finally going to be over. So they prepared themselves for the ceremony. The picture that you see on the left-hand side is a picture of Emperor Hirohito Around August of 1945, he's standing at a microphone reading an edict to the people of Japan. It's likely that this photograph was one of the few photographs of the emperor where he was speaking to the people. Because most people in Japan at the time, they had never heard the emperor's voice before. The emperor was their living God. The emperor is revered even today as the symbol of Japan. But if you look at the photograph on the right-hand side, you'll see a photograph of General Douglas MacArthur and Emperor Hirohito standing together. This is the first time that the emperor is photographed with a Western man. The people who took this picture, they couldn't have known how important this photograph was. And in a meeting with the emperor, MacArthur said, "I do not blame you. I am not going to blame you for World War II, but I need your help." MacArthur says to Emperor Hirohito, "I need your help." And because MacArthur needed Hirohito's help, I think Japan and America forged their alliance. They forged their friendship and their brotherhood because you had men like Hirohito and you had men like MacArthur who did not want to blame each other for the war. They wanted to move forward. They wanted to inspire their countries to work together. And you'll see that in the future. The ceremony to end World War II took place at 9 a.m. on Sunday, September 2nd, 1945, in Tokyo Bay. It's attended by hundreds of Allied officers from Allied countries all across the world: France, Russia, China, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the United States. And for the Japanese were 11 men, including the Foreign Minister of Japan, Mamoru Shigemitsu, and the Imperial Chief of Staff, General Yoshijiro Umezu, and I'll show you them in a few minutes. But neither the President of the United States nor the Emperor of Japan attended the ceremony. Their agents and their military officers attended in their place. But there is one man from the Japanese delegation who attends, whose records of the ceremony are at least here in America, one of the most important pieces of information. And his name was Toshikazu Kase. He attended as a translator and an agent of the imperial household. And he wrote a book titled Journey to the Missouri about his experiences on board. Here you see all of the Allies, the Russians, the British here, French, Canadian, and of course, General MacArthur standing. In this other photograph here on the right-hand side, you'll see the Japanese. Here's Foreign Minister Shigemitsu, General Umezu here. And the younger gentleman standing right here with the top hat, that's Mr. Kase. Kase spoke fluent English. Kase spoke in a language and an English that even I would not use. And I'll hope to explain that to you in a few moments. Give me 1 second, please. I'm going to stop my share here, and I'm going to share a different view with you. We're now on board the battleship Missouri. And it is here, at this spot, that World War II ends in Tokyo Bay, Japan, on the 2nd of September, 1945. Now, if you can imagine, looking this way towards the front of the ship, the 11 Japanese men would stand here. As we turn around, we would look from the Japanese perspective that morning at hundreds of our allies along these walls and above us on top of these gun mounts and things. And the entire ceremony would last only 23 minutes. The whole thing lasted 23 minutes. Let's go back to our this here. Now, at the end of the ceremony was 23 minutes long. I want to leave you, before I continue on to the future, I want to leave you with this slide because it says, different words, same goal. The American president who was not there, Harry Truman, he says, from this day we move forward. We move toward a new era of security at home. With the other United Nations, we move toward a new and better world of cooperation, of peace, and of international goodwill and cooperation. God's help has brought us to this day of victory. With His help, we will attain that peace and prosperity for ourselves and all the world in the years ahead. That's what the American president said on September 2nd. Mr. Kase, the agent of the imperial household, speaking about the same day, says, September 2nd thus commemorates the rebirth of a nation prostrate from defeat, yet groping for light. Light to lead its people back once again toward the blessed way of peace. Japan has renounced the path of aggression. She has exchanged her sword for a spade, and with the spade she will cultivate a new land of hope. These two gentlemen were on opposite sides. They were on the American and the Japanese side, but they spoke the same words on the same day. They spoke of the same thing. They wanted the same hope. They wanted the same peace. And then, 71 years later, these two men met at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial on the 27th of May, 2016. On the right is American President Obama. And on the left is Japanese Prime Minister Abe. They met there. It's the first time that an American president shook hands with a Japanese Prime Minister at Hiroshima, at the site at which we destroy the entire city. This place at which we have our hibakusha. The place where American bombs fell 71 years before in a hope to end the war. But instead of speaking about war and fighting and disagreement and anger, do you know what President Obama said? Well, first of all, President Obama took out 4 pieces of origami paper. And he folded these. He folded these cranes. Mainichi Shimbun in Tokyo, they took this photograph of these two cranes folded by President Obama. And in the guest book there at the Hiroshima Peace Museum, President Obama said, "We have known the agony of war. Let us now find the courage together to spread peace." 70 years after Truman and Kase spoke about hope and peace and prosperity, the American president goes to Hiroshima and says to the people of the world, because they all were listening, he says, "Let us find the courage together to spread peace." And I want to take you to one more spot. If you'll allow me, I want to take you to one more place. Because when we started this afternoon with Jenn over at the USS Arizona, she showed you a picture from the Arizona looking toward the Missouri. And I want to show you and explain to you, looking from our bridge of our ship over the bow of our ship toward the Arizona. From the Arizona, they looked toward us to see the end of the war. And from the Missouri, we look back to remember the beginning. But we look beyond it. We look toward these mountains here. We look toward the future. And it is exactly what President Obama did as he went to Hiroshima. And he says, "Let us find the courage to spread peace." I live it. I'm a part of it. My last name is Yamamoto. I come from Japan. My family's blood is Japanese. You know, 私の日本人です. But more than that, I am a citizen of the world who wants nothing more than peace in the world. That's the message. That's the message that I want to share with you, is that in my own family, we had Japanese soldiers, we had American soldiers. But the story to remember, I hope you will remember, is that my grandfather and my uncle, when they met at the Arizona, my grandfather and my uncle said to me, "We are brothers. We are family. Minna de kazoku desu. We are family." And that is the message that I want to close with. We're all together. All of us together. We're family. I get very emotional. I'm sorry, gomen ne. I get very emotional telling this story because it is a story that you do not hear in the book. You don't hear it in the book. You won't see it in a book because it exists in my kokoro, in my heart. Yeah, my family is here. It's not in the books. It's here. Arigatou gozaimasu. And I will take any questions.
Neil, thank you so much. That was just truly just without words here. But I'm going to direct it to the students. And Michiko-san, are there any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I see one from Sky over there. What's up?
I was just clapping.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
That was good.
There is a question from Japanese student. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm glad to hear your story. Thank you. And I have a question to you. And what do you think is the most important things to realize the peaceful world for the future?
Did you hear?
I'm sorry, what's no?
Okay, yeah, and she said thank you. No, I talk loud. That's why I didn't grow up in Japan, so I talk loud. I grew up in Africa, so we have to shout. But the Japanese students are like very, grow up in a very polite.
No, I understand.
Sorry, so I'm gonna read it in the huge. So she said she wants to know. She thanked you. She thanked your story, and again, she wants to make sure. What do you think the most important thing to promote peace? Which is quite a broad question, but she really wants to hear from you.
The most important thing to promote peace is to know your history. Know you have. I think for me is, to be inspired by your history. And our history is not just war and fighting and beating the other guy. There's stories and histories that we can find about friendship. There's stories and history that we can find that talk about reaching for peace first. One of my favorite stories, not in World War II, was in World War I, something called the Christmas Truce, where British and German soldiers on Christmas Eve, they stopped shooting at each other. And they got out of their trenches and they went across the battlefield and they had a feast. They had dinner together, Germans and British. They had dinner together. And they exchanged gifts and they sang songs and they danced. And then the next morning they went back to their trenches and started shooting at each other again. But you tell stories like that and people start to be inspired by, hey, if they can do it, why can't we do it? Like for me, if my grandfather and my uncle, if they can shake hands and be brothers, even in the middle of war, why can't I be nice to my friends? Why can't I be nice to the person that needs a friend? And that's where it all starts. Like Dorinda said, that's where it all starts.
I'm gonna briefly translate. まず私は歴史を知ること、自分の歴史を知ることっていうのが重要だと思っていて、歴史っていうのは戦争とか戦うだけじゃない、そういう話から友情を見つけていくような、そんなことを考えていけたらいいなと思います。すごく好きなお話であって、これ第一次世界大戦の話があるんですけど、クリスマスツリーの話があります。英国とドイツの兵士たちは戦っていたんですが、クリスマスの日に一日だけ戦うことをやめ、一緒にご飯食べたりですね、贈り物を交わしたり、一緒にダンスをしたという話があります。で、こういう話を聞くと、私たちだってそんなことができるのかなって思うし、他の人によくしなきゃっていうふうに思うわけです。Thank you.
今、湖はどうしてるんです
か？Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our Hibakusha want to know. So the Missouri is now in Hawaii, right next to Arizona. That's his question.
Yes, that's correct.
Hawaii のアリゾナ施設のところにあります。
Yes.
写真の。
そう。
そう。ハワイに行った時は湖がおらんやったっけ。
He said, oh, I think I should take more time when he visited Hawaii. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And just being conscious of time, is it okay if we go a little bit over? Because I know we wanted some time for the students. So I will just transition over to our students that will be sharing, or I shared with them the questions that you sent over, but I introduced them earlier, but our main student panel today will be Yasale, Kawi, or Sky it says on there, and Sarah Kane, who are all students who have grown up in Hawaii, so they can truly speak about the educational system and their just everything as it comes through. But I also have some other students who can jump in if you have questions for them. So Michiko-san, would you want them to just answer the question that you sent over, or do you want to have more of a dialogue with the other students who are here? How would you like to?
Because of the time constraint, I think we can just hear what we questioned prior. Is that okay?
Okay. Yes, perfect. So who would like to start?
Yes, I can go.
Thank you.
Okay. So hi, I'm Sky, and then so the question was, what was for the students in the United States and Japan? They're like taught different things about the atomic bombings, and you asked us if we have learned about the events in our school or anywhere else about the atomic bombings of Japan. And so for me, I didn't really learn much about Nagasaki while I was growing up, like from I would say preschool to high school. It wasn't really mentioned, but until I got to college and I decided to pursue a certificate in peace and conflict resolution, and as well as the Peace Corps prep certificate. It was through Jose's office at the Matsunaga Institute of Peace, where we had more interaction with Pearl Harbor, and I was able to volunteer at Pearl Harbor with him, along with some high school students. We did like a folding cranes event in the entrance of Pearl Harbor, and like we got to see more and then also learn more about the story of a woman that survived the bombings, and she would, I forget her name, but she would fold a crane every day, and yeah, so we're continuing on her legacy. So that's really what I.
And Kawi's referring to Sadako's crane project. That's what she's referring to. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jazale?
Okay. Hi, my name is Jazale Taeza. I'm a freshman in high school and I'm 13 years old. In middle school, 6th grade, we did a topic covering World War II, and we learned about how the bombing of Nagasaki was a devastating event that took place during the war. We also learned about the event from different perspectives, including a Nagasaki bomb survivor, the Vice President/President of America at the time, Harry Truman, and an American soldier. We also learned about the after effect of the bomb on the Japanese. We learned that the bomb caused radiation to spread throughout Japan with devastating effects on them, such as life-threatening cancers. Finally, in the closing to this topic, we learned that after this devastating time, the US and Japan continued to work on their relationship. As an activity, all the students shared their thoughts and perspectives about peace, and all papers were posted on a wall. This activity symbolized our differences and how we can still come together despite having different perspectives on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Sarah, you're up.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm currently a student at the University of Hawaii. I'm an intern with Jose at the Matsunaga Institute for Peace. I've attended public school in Hawaii and since I was in the first grade, and I graduated from Waipahu High School, which Dorinda, I think that you mentioned that you moved to Waipahu immediately after the bombings. So you know that from Waipahu High School, you can see Pearl Harbor. It's basically in our backyard. And growing up in schools, there's always so much emphasis placed on the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And every year when December 7th rolled around, our teachers took a few minutes to teach us really about the horrors that our community endured and the scars it left throughout the generations. But whenever August 6th and the 9th rolled around, the anniversary of Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings, no one really talked about it as much. It wasn't really until I got to college did I learn how our communities are connected by a similar kind of pain. And I recognized that our education system was kind of egocentric in that way, where we kind of focused on the inhumanity that we suffered and not as much as the inhumanity that we've inflicted on others. It was very glossed over. And I noticed that our school system kind of lacked both sides of history, and that's really dismaying. And as Neil said, we have to know our history. But I never really anticipated, amongst all the war stories and the agony that you hear, there's also so much love and stories that you've all shared with me today. And I've been so grateful and touched and humbled to hear all the stories that you've shared, because there's really just so much connection, and it's so inspiring to hear all that, even between those who once viewed themselves as enemies. So thank you so much for letting me partake in this event.
Thank you, Sarah. And then without further ado, I know that you, Michiko-san, you also wanted to hear from Juno regarding peace initiatives, I believe, in Hiroshima. Oh, you're in the...
I think we can go 50, like 11 until we still have can we go over like 15 minutes more? Is that okay for you?
I'm okay.
And this is a great opportunity that we do have some relationship with Hiroshima student, but I think it's also nice to hear from her if it's okay.
Yes, yes, most definitely we can go another 15 minutes. Juno, if you don't mind, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, everyone sharing your stories. I really impressed the stories from Neil and also Dorinda. And I also agree with that in Hiroshima, we don't have much peace education about other countries or how Japanese suffered other countries people. Because in elementary school and junior high school and high school, I went to Peace Memorial Park many times, and also atomic bombing and museum, and we learned or we heard many stories from Hibakusha of Hiroshima. And I also I went to private junior high school and high school, so I think it's a little bit different from Japanese curriculum of peace education a little bit. But I went to Nagasaki and Okinawa as a school trip, and we learned some history and stories over there. But again, we didn't really learn about other countries' history. And I thought through this event, it is important to know the little story, like each family's story, because we cannot know how people were suffering from the like broad story, like the country did this and the other country did that, but we don't know the each people's suffering without like knowing the little stories of that family. So I'm really happy to be here today and could hear the family stories from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then my last student that I have is Dasha, and she's grew up in California. And Dasha, if you want to share anything about what your knowledge is of the atomic bombing or your education, what they may have shared, really appreciate it.
Of course. So I did, in my youth, I grew up in South America, and we didn't really learn much about American history. But I did learn about the war. So I did know that there was bombings, but we didn't get much depth into it. And it wasn't until I came back to the States for high school that we learned in depth about the war, and at least from the teachings I got, we learned both perspectives. We got to look at Pearl Harbor and the attack there, but we also went into depth about the two bombings in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And I think that it is, like Neil said, very important to talk about it. I always like to think history is important because we don't want things to happen again. We need to acknowledge the past and progress that and make sure that we're on the path of peace and we're all as one, as a citizen of the world, going in the right direction together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dasha. And I now want to open it up to any questions from the students in Nagasaki.
Yes, yes, we have.
So we, the students in Nagasaki, are especially learn about the history of Nagasaki and learn about the testimony of the atomic bomb survivor. So as someone said before, nobody doesn't really talk about the history of Pearl Harbor in Nagasaki. So I think we should learn about their history more and more, and we should share this history, and we have to dialogue with each other. So we hope to keep in touch with each other. So thank you for having this event.
Yeah.
Yukino, as you said, it is important to know both sides of history. So we want to continue taking contact with you to learn about both sides of history. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so yeah. These are the comments. I hope everybody could hear. That's okay? Okay. But as from my side, I just want to comment on, I was really, I think this will be really important first step for Nagasaki students to really study more about the US side of the story of the Second World War II. And also, I was very, I got this inspiration of really learning about your history, your family history, which is so familiar to us. I mean, everybody here today is a hibakusha. They're like third generation or fourth generation of hibakusha. So they each of us has family story. So we will be like really seeking the way to communicate using our family history to promote peace as well. So thank you very much. This was like, I got lots of inspiration from all of you, and really, it is really great to know what kind of education you have in the US. So for the future, we can start how we can dialogue with people in the States. And again, thank you. Yeah.
Mhm. You know, I think in Hawaii we have a term, we call it talking story, and what that means is, you know, we just meet like this and we share what we know, we share what we've experienced, we share you know, just the fun things about where we are and where we're at in life. And I think as a historian, I think that's the most important part. You know, when we talk about peace education, we talk about moving forward, being able to share those stories, being able to share the experiences with others is as you said, Michiko-san, the first step is to hear the story. The first step is to know that there is someone out there who has similar experiences that you do. And so again, from my perspective with Inspired History Hawaii, to be a part of this, Jose, Michiko-san, all of you, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for this opportunity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's truly been an honor to collaborate with you. And in the spirit of storytelling, if you want to continue these dialogues, to create even like doesn't have to be anything formal, happy to coordinate something that works time zones with everybody, and with the power of technology, you know, we can have further dialogues and conversations about this. So thank you so much. This has just been an honor, and it was quite a treat to get two survivors here today from different parts of the world and honestly, just the dialogue between the both of you was just, yeah, just truly just very enriching for my soul. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And yeah.
It was an honor for me too. And I've known Neil, but I've never known his story. And such a fascinating, it almost made me think, Neil, of the Civil War, you know, where a brother on the North and a brother fighting for the South. But to have a Tutu man and an uncle, such a moving story. Mahalo for sharing that, or arigato for sharing that.
Today was like a full circle. And so we started with the history, both Pearl Harbor and ending at the war as well too at the Missouri. We heard from two survivors, which are two very inspiring stories. And we also ended with our students, and our students being those that'll carry on history and the stories as well to these inspiring stories. And so I myself am very inspired and moved by all of your stories, and allowing us to be a part of this event as well too. So thank you, Michiko-san.
Aloha and a hui hou until we meet again.
Yes, arigatou gozaimasu.
So I think we are closing now.
Yes, we can, unless there's any other questions from the audience. Just want to be respectful of any questions.
No, it's okay. And again, thank you. By the way, we are planning to go to visit Hawaii once the COVID is over. So hopefully we can meet in person. And also, finally, I have one request. Can we just come take a group picture? So I just gonna do and I want to call some observers if they want to show up, because there's an observers here. オブザーバーの皆さんで顔映ってもいいっていう人は今写真っていうか撮りますので見せてください。Although there's a lot of observers, maybe they are too shy. オブザーバーの人出てきていいですよ。No, there's a lot of them, but they are like, maybe they don't put makeup on today. But yes, so now, what about, またピースにする? Aloha, how, Japanese student asking how we should greet, do the aloha things, then we can do it together. So, how do you do it? Like this? Okay, hold on there. Hold on there. So, we're gonna, プリントスクリーンで誰か撮ってもらっていいですか? あれ Okay, we're gonna, I have to do the print screen, so I can't do it. So, but we're gonna go, okay, 1, 2, okay, print screen, こことここね. Yeah, yeah. So, ready? Okay. Okay, okay. Sorry. じゃあ行きます。Okay. いいですか? 1.
鈴木さんが違う。鈴木さんの指が違う。
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Aloha.
Aloha.
コントロールとあるとだな。
コントロールとプリントスクリーン。
Well, again. 1, 2, 3. Aloha.
Aloha.
One more. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Night-night.
ありがとうございました。So we're gonna close. Thank you, Jose-san. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.
ありがとうございます。
ありがとう。